Thank you for tuning in once again to his Vine and Fig Tree podcast. My name is Kurt Olson. I'm your host. I'm coming to you on the early afternoon of February 12th, 2025. A lot of things to bring to your attention here in light of the rapid pace with which several things are happening. And I'm going to start with the left. Um, and we are going to start with the Democrats. The Democratic National Committee, this didn't get a lot of attention, from what I can gather. The Democratic National Committee met 2 weeks ago to uh, elect a new chairman of the party, elect people who are supposed to run this party. Now, this is why this party is going to continue to struggle to win elections. So, and I don't know if this was the opening of the weekend or if it was just one of the sessions they had. But the person who was running this meeting, and I don't know if it's the current, well, it was the current head of the DNC or whoever. Um, They asked for a show of hands if you believed election 2024 was decided by misogyny and racism. And to a person on the stage and in the room, that's what they believed. And if this is the way that they're going to behave moving forward, there's going to be a lot of hurt that comes to Democrats before they gain any kind of traction at the national level again. Because what these people are doing is absolutely silly. They don't get it. They're tone deaf. They don't understand what happened to them. And if you're a party that just lost the Senate, you had the majority there, you continue to have a slight deficit in the House and the White House. If all of those things just happened to you, you would think there would be a little bit of self reflection. There would be a little bit of self awareness and people coming to terms with what the Americans reject, with what the American people rejected. And they're not doing it. So if that continues, it's going to be a long time before these people gain some kind of attention. Hunter Biden, and this is a name I would just like to stop being rolled off my lips. But there was reporting, and it came from a Sean Ryan podcast. He had a guest on. And this person said, after the CNN debate last June, which led to the whole let's kick Joe from the ticket, from the top of the ticket, after that debate, the story is that Hunter Biden, he of crack addiction, videos with hookers. I mean, this guy has a screaming national security threat all around him. That that guy, that son of the sitting president, was the one who was he was the funnel through which information was getting to the president. And he was even leading meetings. Um Not a surprise, but wow. Wow. But we still don't know who was actually running the government the prior time ahead. Because there's also word coming out that some people are pretty convinced that before big events, they were pumping something into Joe, whether it was Adderall or something else, to keep him sober and sane. So the news continues to get worse there. Gaza. Um, we have a situation now that could escalate very quickly in the Middle East. Um, you might recall prior to the Trump inauguration, there were there were envoys sent over to the Middle East, sitting down with Israel and Hamas and a variety of others, and coming up with a hostage deal. Well, we've seen some hostages released. And if you've seen any of the images, I mean, it's just appalling what they're doing to these small groups of people, whether they're females or even the males. Um, but word came earlier this week that Hamas was ending the ceasefire and that there would be no more hostages released. At which point, President Donald Trump said, "You have until noon on Saturday to release the hostages, or whatever happens is your own fault." And this gets back to something I was saying after the election and believing that Trump was going to somehow make a statement early in his presidency that there is a new sheriff in town and people better buck up. So this was one of these things that probably most people didn't notice, but it happened on a Friday or a Saturday, the first weekend he was in office. There was an attack in Somalia on an ISIS group there, um, connected to Al Shabaab, another terrorist group in Eastern Africa. So the low hanging fruit is this: apparently, there was intel over time that would have justified the Biden administration to go ahead and do something against these people because they were planning attacks against allies of the United States. So, with Biden not taking any action, Trump said, easy. So, and there was even some footage that emerged from this. Now, here's the thing that bothers me: these attacks happen, and we don't get proof that bad guys were eliminated. That's the thing that, but we were assured that these people were in a cave and it was taken out and they're dead. Well, let's hope they are. But again, that was low hanging fruit. If Hamas does not comply by noon Saturday, we're going to see, I believe, not just Israel, but the United States do something against either Hamas and Iran, one or the other. Both scenarios are possibilities. And what was even more shocking is that these people thought that they could negotiate in good faith with a bunch of terrorists who had had hostages for well over a year and things were going to work out. What caused Iran back in late 1980, early 1981 to say we want nothing to do with the that cowboy Ronald Reagan? I don't know what the differences are here. Um, but you would have thought that precedent alone from 1981 would have meant let's make sure nothing goes wrong. But here we are just a couple weeks later, and we're on the verge of a complete collapse of everything that was supposed to be release of hostages. And because we don't have all the Americans, I could easily see the United States engaged in something there very soon. Um, and with Gaza, let's talk briefly about the whole turning the Gaza Strip into the Riviera of the Middle East, and this idea of uh, getting the Palestinians to either go to Egypt or Jordan or both. The reality is this: over history, over time, the Arab nations have wanted nothing to do with the Palestinians, period. And the idea that Egypt and Jordan are going to just acquiesce to Trump and everything is going to be hunky dory and all whatnot, I don't know. I don't know. It's something that this has to play out, but everything that Trump touches is not going to turn gold, and I just can't believe that Egypt and Jordan are just going to just, oh yeah, let's open the gates from the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and I it's one of those things where I have to see it to believe it, because I just don't believe the likelihood is very strong. Doge. Uh, I don't want this to be a regular segment, but who knows? It might be. In recent days, we've had, so late last week, we had a federal district judge who was an Obama appointee, and this was judge shopping. That's what this was. Basically, came down with a decision and said they had to stop what they were doing, and putting all these handcuffs on what was going on with U.S. aid and a variety of other things. And here you have, at this very time, the Democrats, when I say Democrats, I'm talking at this point in time, because they have no one running any of the branches. I'm just talking about the congressional Democrats, and occasionally you might see some others nationwide, like one of the governors, like JD JB Pritzker. You might see Megan Whitmer, perhaps our governor here, Kathy Hochul, maybe Gavin Newsom on occasion. So when I say Democrats right now, it's basically those in Congress. You have the Democrats, you have the media, you have the the federal employees who were potentially impacted by what's going on here, screaming constitutional crisis. We got a constitutional crisis. If you sat for 3.5 years under Joe Biden as president, knowing he was in cognitive decline and not saying anything to the American people, you have no room at all to scream anything about a constitutional crisis. So if that is your line of argument now on the left, sit down and be quiet, because y'all have lost your credibility. And what I find just so ironic and rich during this entire debate is they're screaming about how Elon Musk has this group of people and they're doing X and Y and Z and A and B and C. And it's, we can't have it. We can't have it. We can't have it. Well, the harsh reality, folks, is this: The President of the United States does not run every agency on his own. He has a cabinet, he has various appointees at varying levels, and we're going to get to one at the end of this podcast. Um, and they have every right to fulfill the will of the executive who was just elected. And the idea that he can't do that is stupid. I it is so intellectually vacant. And if this is going to be one of these new arguments on the left and then the media, they're playing mind games that don't deserve any attention because the president is allowed to act as an executive, and he is allowed to appoint people to act on his behalf. And what's even better in this entire little back and forth about what Doge is doing and what they're finding and what they're stopping and leaders of the Congress, whenever there is a continuing resolution, an omnibus spending bill, what are they always telling their members? Oh, you can't read that appropriations bill. First of all, it's like 1,500 pages, and you need a small team of people taking it in sections in order to have any kind of a clue what is even in there. Okay? But on top of all that, oh, you don't need to read the appropriations bill. And all of a sudden, these congressional Democrats now want to read appropriations bills. The the role reversal and the mind games that they're playing on people like we're not paying attention is just rich. And let's be clear, the people who are screaming about what Doge is finding out and the potential agencies that could get shuttered and other things, these are the same congressional Democrats that wanted to hire almost 90,000 IRS agents. So I got no pity for them. No pity at all. Super Bowl ads. Um, I want to touch on some of the themes that came to the forefront here as we had Super Bowl 59 last Sunday. Um, and there's a lot of people that over time have gotten to a point where, oh, the best commercials are during the Super Bowl, and that's what they want to see. And that has developed over the last 20, 25, 30 years. From some of those really interesting commercials that either had inspiring messages or just simply funny back in the 80s and 90s. Okay. Let me start with Jeep. Harrison Ford was the spokesman for Jeep. Now, he owns a Jeep Rubicon, apparently. At least that's what we saw in the ad. And this commercial kind of struck at Americana as Harrison Ford is talking about freedom and the things that Americans love, their families, and other things. One of the opening lines of this commercial was, "Life has no owner's manual." Yes, it does. The owner's manual is the Bible. And all you have to do is grow to know it and what Christ has for us, and you'll have value, worth, meaning, purpose, all of the stuff that our current culture doesn't want you to have. So I'll start with Jeep. Let me go to next the Nike ad because this was something else. So Nike comes out with a commercial and it is females in the WNBA, tennis, soccer, track, gymnastics. Just trying to figure out if I saw any other sports in that bunch. Doesn't matter if there were other sports. So it's a variety of females in various settings, white and black, Caitlin Clark, and a cadre of others. And the narrator for this commercial for Nike is saying, they tell you you can't. 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 And at the end of all of those, they tell you you can't, is the line, they tell you you can't win. So win. Okay? And that was the title for this ad. So win. The problem with this Nike commercial is, especially since it involves women, that is not the argument that is involved in women's sports right now. The argument is not that they can't win. The argument is there are boys and men jumping into their moments and taking their titles, their championships, their medals, their ribbons, whatever it is. In fact, there was even a UN study, I believe it was in 2023, that indicated there were 900 championships taken from women. And of all of the entities I'm shocked to hear this coming from in terms of a study, um, the UN produced this. But there were 900 championships taken from women and girls by transgender athletes. So Nike, you don't even have an ad built on the truth. Because it's not an issue of telling the girls they can't win. It's having men and boys jump into their sports and stealing those moments from them and so that they could win. So the Nike commercial, for all of the praise that it's getting, even from some Christians, was lacking truth. The other ad I want to get, there's two others, and they were both NFL ads. So, one of the things that happened in this Super Bowl is they took the phrase end racism off the end line in the end zones. It had been there since the 2020 season after the George Floyd fiasco in Minneapolis and all of the riots and all of the mayhem that unfolded in spring 2020, straight in the middle of COVID. And the NFL decided to have a phrase, choose love. And you might have seen it if you watched the game at on some of on helmets. But the NFL decided to have Tom Brady and Snoop Dogg do this kind of face to face where they were talking about either racism or anti Semitism or other things, and basically saying it's sad that we have to even have this conversation. Um, it, a fine message. I just don't want preaching in my sports. If you're going to do a commercial in a sports event, be creative, be funny, be genuinely funny, but don't preach. The last ad, also an NFL ad, was a lot of the community service stuff that players from teams engage in cities across the country where they are located. Uh, Dallas, Buffalo, Jacksonville, Cleveland, L.A., Chicago. Name the city. Well, groups of kids are around these NFL players, and they get these chants of "I'm somebody, I'm somebody, I'm somebody." Yeah, you're somebody. And it was a perfect moment for the NFL to have former coach Tony Dungy, Houston Texans quarterback CJ Stroud, or one of the other Christians in this league just emphasize the fact, you know why these kids in the inner city are somebody? You know why these people who have developmental disabilities, and if that phrase is somehow a trigger point for someone, I'm sorry, but whatever, you know what I'm talking about. The reason these people are somebody, they're made in the image of God. They are image bearers of the Creator. They are people who have worth, value, meaning, purpose. Again, let me get back to something I hit on earlier. Something this culture just doesn't want people to have, and is constantly giving you the exact opposite message from that. So that was really a missed opportunity by the NFL in terms of it, there was, mind you, there was no way that the NFL was going to have a overtly Christian message, but it was the time to do it. All right. As we come to the closing moments of this episode, I just want to hit on three faith and culture related stories. The first one happened last week. Russ Vogt was confirmed as the head of the Office of Management and Budget by the Senate. Russ Vogt is a Houghton College graduate. And during the day on Saturday last weekend, um, they came out with a congratulatory social media post, and then the trigger happy left wing alumni of Wheaton College couldn't handle it because they don't like Russ Vogt. They don't like the fact that he's a conservative. They don't like the fact that he's in the Trump administration. They don't like the fact that he's a Christian that acts on his principles. And Wheaton College ended up deleting the social media post. Shame on them for being cowards. The second one is Rick Warren. Rick Warren, known by a lot of people, former pastor at Saddleback Church in California, um, got into a dust up with the Southern Baptist Convention over having female pastors. This would have been what, in the last 3, 4, 5 years, something like that. And this morning, apparently he was reading John 19:18, story narrative of the crucifixion, where it is stated, they crucified Jesus with two others, one on each side, and Jesus in the middle. And then Rick Warren goes on to say, the guys on both sides were thieves. And then he makes this statement after collecting an image you've probably seen before of Jesus and then the two thieves at the time of the crucifixion. And He states this: if you're looking for the real Jesus in hashtag, not a caricature disfigured by partisan motivations, you'll find him in the middle, not on either side. And Rick Warren is getting a fair amount of attention from a lot of people in reformed theology. Some would even say evangelical Christians. Um, it- my biggest issue with Rick Warren here, and we can only assume he did this on his own and did not have someone do it for him. There's an awful lot of issues where Jesus is black and white on. And mind you, there's a lot of things that are also very gray, even though the Bible speaks to some things, because people still have liberty in Christ. But there's an awful lot of things that are also very black and white in Scripture. Um, the killing of babies, um, the definition of marriage, a bunch of things. And for Rick Warren to put out this social media post today, actually, no, it wasn't today. It was yesterday, a little bit before 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was February 11th at 12:54 p.m. Um, Stop. I can't believe he put that out thinking it would somehow make sense to people. And um, we're in a culture here where there's a lot of people that are trying to steer away from the partisan divide that's going on. And make no mistake, the country does have partisan divide. But to throw Christ into the mix and somehow say that, he's in the middle on everything, that's just not the case. The last thing I'm going to share with you is a piece that was written by John Stonestreet and Shane Morris at the organization called Breakpoint. Now, there's been a lot of things happening in the culture in recent months that have people asking, are we on the verge of something else? This article is titled, Is God Having a Cultural Moment? This was written on Monday, and I'm going to read this. God seems to be having a moment. Culturally speaking, so is the Bible, it seems. In December, the Wall Street Journal reported that Bible sales were up 22% in the U.S. last year, while sales of other books were essentially flat. In fact, in 2019, 9.7 million copies of the Bible were sold in America. Last year, the number approached 14 million, with most sales driven by first time buyers. Then there is football, with Ohio State players preaching to students last summer and on national television after winning the national championship. Boise State head coach Spencer Danielson praising Jesus at the Fiesta Bowl. And Baltimore Ravens head coach John Harbaugh leading his team in the Lord's Prayer. God talk on and off the field has been conspicuous this season. Or consider the moment God is having among secular thought leaders. Richard Dawkins and Elon Musk, recognizing the importance of Christianity in the West, have labeled themselves cultural Christians. Former New Atheist Ayan Hirsi Ali experienced and defended a conversion to Christian faith, as did her husband, well known historian and Hoover Institute fellow Niall Ferguson. Former atheist and well-known former atheist and popular historian Tom Holland's best-selling book has changed the narrative about the positive role Christianity has played in making the Western world. Psychologist and author Jordan Peterson often references scripture and just released a 500-page book attempting to draw lessons and meaning from the Old Testament. And of course, podcaster Joe Rogan recently interviewed Christian apologist Wesley Huff for his 14 million subscribers. Justin Brearley, co-host of the Unbelievable broadcast and author of The Unsurprising Rebirth of Belief in God, thinks we are seeing something significant. They say God moves in mysterious ways. I see signs that he is moving in the minds and hearts of secular intellectuals. Many of them are recognizing that secular humanism has failed and, against all of their expectations, seem to be on the verge of embracing faith instead. Brearley thinks this wider turning of the secular tide in the West is a result of secularism's failed predictions. A couple of decades ago, the new atheists promised a rational utopia in the wake of religious decline. Instead, we got a crisis of meaning, widespread confusion, a mental health crisis in the young, and the culture wars. Now, a new theist movement has sprung up, and even those not converting to Christ have toned down the anti Christian rhetoric. Some are even suggesting that faith is good for the world. Still, Brierly cautions that what we're seeing is far from a revival. Many of the cultural Christians of our moment are not believers, nor are they claiming to be. There's a big difference in regarding Christianity as a useful fiction, able to restore vigor and cohesion to the West, and submitting to it as the ultimate truth, which demands our allegiance and devotion. For the millions of new Bible owners, the difference is between looking for sage advice and looking for God. Neither a better world nor a better you is what Christianity fundamentally offers. Though a vibe shift in favor of religion is welcome, and cultural Christianity is genuinely a good thing, Christ does not claim to be useful. He claims to be the risen Son of God and King of Kings, before whom every knee must bow. Those hoping to make him useful overlooked that the West did not become a great civilization because people believed Christianity offered good advice, but because they believed it was true. Anyone who believes Anyone who tries to use the God of the Bible to some earthly end will only be repeating the blunder of mainline Protestantism, not doing something genuinely new or important. At the same time, the truth about Christ is compelling. Thus, the renewed interest of this cultural moment can be welcomed and celebrated. Secularism has failed to satisfy the human soul or build the utopia that was promised, but Christ will not fail, not in this world nor in the age to come. Our task is to point insistently to the full and glorious truth of his rule and reign. We can direct the curious to resources like the Bible Project or Graham Goldsworthy's classic According to Plan, both of which explain that the Bible is and what it teaches. Proven apologetic classics like C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity and the timeless accounts of conversion like St. Augustine's Confessions are incredibly helpful resources for those willing to give God a new look. Most importantly, the church must be the church, with the word faithfully taught and lived. After all, we know that God's word will not return void, and he is at work through his people in this and every cultural moment. With that said, I can't end it any better than that. I thank you for watching. I thank you for reading my column. I thank you for um, being a part of what I'm attempting to build here. And until next time, God bless and goodbye.